The group in Minnesota we were working with was growing 140 acres. In New York was growing 5 acres.
And this year, the same? Did you multiply?
Yeah, so we're not focused on being growers. We actually built a cooperative here in Illinois. We have 35 farmer members this year. It's an inaugural year. And it's been a fantastic experience because we've learned as much from them as they've learned from us. But so for us, we're not in the cultivation space. That's not what we think we're best at. And since we have, these partners in the cooperative, we get to work on cultivation through them.
Yeah. So Jon, how are you two connected? How long have you guys worked together, and how'd you guys get connected?
We actually got connected because I was working with another farm who had expressed interest in hemp, and I was kind of doing research and development for it, and I ended up calling Lance about seeing what we could do together on it, and I really liked what he was doing here. It was an interesting end of agriculture that I hadn't really gotten into yet. I'd always kind of just been a basement grower and kept it to myself, but it was a good opportunity to be able to do it on a larger scale and really be a part of an industry that's just now starting out as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah.
Kind of jumped at the opportunity, and that's how we got here.
Very cool. So what's your background then?
Sure. Before this, I was working for a large-scale wholesale nursery. So it was tree and shrub production. I was the propagator there. So I was the one starting all the trees and the shrubs that would be eventually put out in the fields.
Okay. Very cool. Now, Lance, welcome both of you, right? But Lance, now tell me what's your background besides, or share your background if you don't mind. I know a little bit about it, but how'd you get into this industry, and what'd you do before this?
I started my career as an archaeologist, and then went to law school, and then spent about 22 years in Manhattan in and around Manhattan first as a securities attorney, and then as a banker on Wall Street. So, and about 5 or 6 years ago, I left that and began doing some smaller ventures in the food system. And so we were looking at building hydroponic systems, running farmers markets, just kind of doing interesting things that I enjoyed doing around some of the passions that I had. And we kind of bumped into hemp and particularly CBD through our farmers markets where those were being sold in different consumer products. And I was fascinated by it. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but did some research, and then was ready when the Farm Bill passed in 2018 to launch a business that was focused on being involved more than in selling the retail product, but also in growing genetics, cultivating, processing, and actually formulating some of the products. So
cool. So tell me a little bit about where you guys are now, where you've been now, where are you at in business, and where are you guys going?
Sure. So we're actually located in Illinois, the northwest corner of Illinois, and we came here pretty deliberately. We decided that the Midwest was a very good place to be operating, in the cannabis space. And you and I chatted a little bit beforehand, but just to be clear to your listeners, this is more. We decided to speak more about CBD hemp, as opposed to talking about THC today. We're talking about fiber. We'd love to get on and chat with you again about some of those other topics, but we're going to try and keep it focused on CBD and some of the minor cannabinoids today. So we were looking at building out an operation initially that was focused on growing genetics for farmers. So, ensuring that we selected the right strains for the region, that we were properly feminizing, and creating enough variety that we could offer some diversity of genetics to our customers. So we originally started in New York. That's where I came from. Spent some time looking there. We were a grower and a processor in New York, but we ultimately decided the Midwest was the right place to be for various reasons, including just this sort of the nation's center of agriculture. The infrastructure here is built. There's a lot of manufacturing space that's available. There's a farming culture here. The cost of living is more affordable. So we decided this was the place to be. We spent a little time in Minnesota and North Dakota last year, doing some growing up there. We had some farming going on in New York, but ultimately looked at Illinois as a jurisdiction that seemed to fit well with our needs. So we came down into Illinois, found a facility that's kind of around us here. You can see some of it behind us here. It's about 110,000 square feet, and we thought it would be great to start, initially growing genetics, and then we've turned into more of an integrated firm where we're actually offering processing services. We have an extraction capability here. We have a formulation lab. We have a tissue culture lab, and so we have the ability to really do everything within one roof, growing our own genetics all the way through to formulating and distributing product.
Incredible. How many acres did you grow last year, and where?
So we partnered with a couple of different growers. The group in Minnesota we were working with was growing 140 acres. The group in New York was growing 5 acres.
Okay. And this year the same? Did you multiply? Where are you as
Yeah, so we're not focused on being growers. We're not, we actually built a cooperative here in Illinois. We have 35 farmer members this year. It's an inaugural year. And it's been a fantastic experience because we've learned as much from them as they've learned from us. But so for us, we're not in the cultivation space. That's not what we think we're best at. And since we have, these partners in the cooperative, we get to work on cultivation through them. And the partnership works well because our view on CBD, we can get more into the economics of this, but our view on the CBD space after the difficulties we had in valuation and pricing last year is that there needs to be more attention paid to how to monetize your efforts. In whatever value chain you're working in the space, you have to figure out how you're going to make a profit from what you've done. And we looked at selling genetics to farmers, and we thought there wasn't a really great path to profitability for most. Because if you're selling your biomass and oil at current prices, it's challenging to get any reward from your efforts. So the cooperative for us was a way of partnering with the farming community and helping them find a way to monetize their efforts. So what we do is we provide genetics to members of the cooperative. They cultivate, they harvest and dry, and take back material here from their efforts. We process that. We'll either focus on a portion of it will be packaged flower, a portion of it will be infused product, and then we go out and market those products, to wholesale and retail buyers, and we share the revenues at the level of the sale of consumer products back to the farmer, not the sale of biomass and oil. And if for those who know much about the industry, most of the profitability takes place. Most of the returns generated on the sale of products to the consumer.
Cool. So you guys take it all the way through.
That's a much more succinct way of saying it, yes.
I guess it's genetics. You guys talk a lot about genetics and the value and the importance of genetics. Where do you see the biggest mistakes happening, in the CBD space that people are making around the genetics conversation or lack of genetics? This is a long enough conversation to go through all that, but we make our own mistakes too, and we'll yeah. But I think the farming community is still ramping up and going up the learning curve in terms of what they should be looking for. There are so many different variables to it. It's hard to really go into it, but you have on the one hand you have microclimates, different soil types, different farming practices that are going to sort of have a strong impact on the success or failure of a particular farmer's efforts. From the pure genetics point of view, I think we've looked at all the different ways of trying to do this. So we have pretty strong views on what works and what doesn't. I would say that those who think about using non-feminized genetics are probably going to be challenged in their farming year.
and we'll probably end up doing feminized genetics the following year. It's just that the scouting process and the labor required is so intensive that some people try it, but I think most people either give it up or move to feminized. So I think that's really important. I think what else can I say about that? Feminized, whether you choose to use seed or seedlings or clones is also important. It just depends on your own infrastructure and your capabilities. I'll ask Jon to kind of comment on that. We had farmers in our cooperative. We provided any of those, all three of those to them. Most of the success I would say we've seen, the best success has come from the farmers using clones. But that's not to say that seed or seedlings don't also work well. It's just you're probably going to have to be a little bit more diligent and attentive to the plants in the earlier stages for those to work out as well as clones.
Definitely requires more experience when you're growing from seed. I have a much higher success rate of failure when I'm growing from seed for anything, let alone.
Right, and I think that's something that people haven't necessarily considered as much because there's not many crops on a large scale that operate in that same way where you have the opportunity to start from a clone. But the reality is if you start from a seed, you are taking an infant plant, is what it is in practice, and growing it into an adult. The cutting is already a piece of that adult plant, so you tend to see a higher resistance to pests. You'll see a much higher tolerance for fertilizers and foods. You have a better tolerance for being able to accept water that may not be the best water in the world. So farmers who are using well water don't have as many hiccups. Overall, the clone from a physiological standpoint is a stronger piece of material than what you'll ever get out of a young seedling. Now, the seedling can grow up and it can be nice and strong and healthy, but like you mentioned before, the issue becomes it goes back to how much skill that particular grower has and their understanding of how to get it to where it needs to be is a much larger factor when you're working with a seed or a seedling.
Cool. So I see on here that Matt and Ryan, I don't know if they can hear us or if we want to try to add them in. It looks like they've just called in potentially. Did you guys share a link? Let's see if we can get them. Matt, can you guys hear us? Ryan?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
Hey, sorry about that. Good. Ryan got caught up, and so he'll be here shortly.
No worries. You're live.
On.
You're live on our live stream right now.
Wonderful. All right.
Okay. And Lance and Jon are both on as well.
That's
Hello.
great. Hey, guys.
So for those that are listening, sorry, Lance. Want to introduce yourself real quick, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt Williams, we're here locally in Salt Lake City. We work with Refined Wealth Management and have been working with Lance and his partnership with Sulcanna in the private equity. I think that Ryan probably could be more useful and a more thorough introduction, but when he gets in, we can do that as well.
Perfect. Well, we were just kind of talking about the CBD space and where it's going, or I guess where you guys have been staying in the CBD space. Where do you guys, Jon and Lance, really see the biggest opportunity, and what are you guys working on? That's up and coming, or may not be out in the open and be talked about, and maybe not you worked on, but what do you see? I guess that's really being developed, and maybe we should be watching for.
Yeah, I think you continue to see a proliferation of consumer products that are being developed and refined, and we're part of that effort. We're doing our own in that space, and I looking forward, I think there are a couple of headwinds that we got to get through before we sort of see CBD products becoming more mainstream. Clearly, this whole regulatory overhang is difficult for the market. We're not going to get to large scale adoption until the FDA has made some movement on what it's going to allow and not allow. They've asserted ownership of the regulation of CBD due to its inclusion as an active ingredient in Epidiolex. So I think whether or not that's appropriate, whether it's probably past the point of argue. The market accepts that the FDA has oversight, and I think the industry is really waiting for them to kind of put some meat on the bones, if you will, around what processors and formulators and distributors can and can't do, the kinds of claims that can be made. And I don't think we're that far off as an industry from. We've kind of been forced to self-regulate in many respects, and I think that's a good thing in the sense that when you do that, you create a community of people who are all understanding that that their behavior has an impact on consumers' perspectives on how safe or how useful products are. So, I think what we're all dealing with, there's some bad actors in the space who have done things that probably have been targeted at making a quick buck, but haven't been conducive to a longer term trust in the industry. So I think the headwind around the regulatory status of CBD in products is probably the biggest challenge that we're facing. I think once we're past that, you're going to find large scale adoption by large consumer goods companies, and I think at that point, the opportunity is huge. I would say that one of the things that, going back to the question before, but maybe to touch on this, one of the things that I think caused the pricing problems last year was, and I don't think this is too much dispute, so I'm probably saying something that everyone understands, but there's a whole, oversupply. There's a huge overhang, right? And it continues to be here. We're going to have probably quite a bit less hemp farmed this year. But until we have the FDA come out and create more clarity in the market, and you have large consumer goods products getting into the space, that supply demand balance is going to probably be easily put out of equilibrium. So you're going to have a lot of volatility in pricing. And so I think until that clears up, where we want to be focused is on that point in the value chain where we can monetize at the consumer product level.
What are some of the cool products you're making right now? I mean, outside of the common tinctures or gummies, some edibles, what are some cool things that you're developing?
So we have a skincare line that we think is very interesting. Our head of formulation here is a licensed esthetician, and she comes to us with a lot of years of experience in working in spas and other settings where that's something that people are accustomed to consuming. So we've developed facial serums, eye serums, moisturizers, and other applications that we think are going to be very interesting. And I think if you look at, and I don't have all the data at my fingertips, but I think what I've seen is that beauty market, if you will, has a lot of room to grow. I think there's a lot of space for that to grow. So that's very interesting to us. We have the consumables, edibles, if you will. We do have gummies. Everyone's got to have gummies. We have vegan gummies as well, which are fantastic. Yep. We do caramels, fruit chews. We have something called fruit chews and chocolate chews, which are based on white and milk chocolate that I think are very unique. That I don't see other people doing.
Okay.
We have tinctures. We have some pet products, and then the typical topicals you see, which is like a pain cream, cooling muscle gel, warming muscle gel, and then on top of that we have all of our smokable products. So we offer pre-rolls and packaged flour, vapes, and such.
And are you guys manufacturing? You're all in-house, the whole piece of the manufacturing process. Once you're getting the flour and the extraction.
We do. I mean, I'll just sort of pan our camera a little bit, see if I can do this without kind of totally messing this up. So down at the other end of this floor here in our building, there we go. It's a little better. Is our formulation room, which you can't really see well from here, but that was something that we built earlier this year that now houses about a 2,000 square foot formulation lab. Panning over here behind us is our extraction lab, where we extract biomass into crude, into distillate. So yeah, we're sort of fully integrated here. We can do all this stuff, in house, which for us is great because I think it leads us to a place where we can actually offer for some pretty attractive pricing. We're not dependent on intermediaries or brokers for any point in the supply chain.
Well, like you said, it's where all the price gouging had happened, right? It's always at this. Farmers are being taken advantage of, and it changes between the extraction and the distribution, or the farmers and the extraction, as to who's taking prices where. And
yeah,
depends on demand.
And it's challenging because since we do all this internally here, we understand each of these pieces fairly well, and I realize why extractors need to price things the way they do, and I know that can seem like gouging to like farmers in some ways, or for example, distributors, could sort of may seem like they're trying to take advantage, but putting these infrastructures in place is expensive. So I think it's we're still very early days. I think fast forward a few years, a vertically integrated business may not be the right way to be running it. But I think today, given the uncertainty in the supply chain, it gives a business a lot more certainty around its ability to meet its plans.
Well, and especially even not only just the supply and the demand, but the consistency of the product, right? As well as anybody in the industry that from one corner of the field to the next, your crop could potentially change, the amount of CBD or the level of THC in the genetics or in the plant. And so, yeah, it's very difficult when you're trying to hit large scale orders and you're trying to pull from 3 or 4 different farms or 3 or 4 different labs and pull stuff together. The product demand is hard to meet. It's very up and down.
Yeah, I think that's right. That testing comment you make, that could suffice to fill a whole hour. We'll leave that one alone. But that's one of the challenges that we find is the inconsistency. And there are groups. There's a group here in Illinois that has developed a project for this summer. It's inclusive of University of Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State, and Wisconsin-Madison. And they've developed a project which I think is fantastic. It's being run mostly by a guy named Philip Alberti out here in Illinois with the extension, that is essentially looking to create more certainty around genetics and help farmers understand what's going to work for their field. And they're doing all kinds of data gathering, and then at the end of the season they'll come up with analysis on all the strains that were farmed throughout the Midwest, and have a body of knowledge next year for people to benefit from.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I think you said it a couple of times, and I just can't reiterate. It's funny when people say, well, how come we don't have all of this stuff done? And why don't we have all of these regulations in place? And how come it's not just accessible everywhere? You have to remember, we're in a very new industry, and putting these things together, it takes a lot of time. You made a comment earlier, or just a little bit ago, you said that later on, being fully integrated may not be the best choice, but right now it is. Why wouldn't it be later on? What would you see changing that would change that direction, especially in CBD? I can understand maybe in hemp fibers, but consumables?
Yeah, I mean, it's a comment that we've just sort of taken to heart here as an approach to trying to be as nimble as possible, from a business strategy point of view. So as an example, right, call it a year and a half ago, the market was pricing biomass at $4 per percent per pound. Fast forward 6 months from there, it was pricing at like 70 cents, right? So, I mean, show me a market where that kind of volatility doesn't completely disrupt supply chains. So you had a bunch of people coming into the industry, building out farming operations, building out infrastructures for processing, so extractors and formulators. And when you have that kind of massive disruption in price, the follow on to that is tremendous. So if you're an extractor and you've priced in, for example, let's say you priced in $5,000 crude per kilo, right? And now all of a sudden now it's $800. You may not be in business anymore, right? You may not even be able to operate without losing money every day you walk into the office. So if you've set up a business that's in that environment where there's that kind of volatility that is integrated and allows you to monetize your efforts at different points in the chain, I can say I can still extract. I know I'm not making money on that extraction, but I'm not trying to. I'm trying to turn this product into a more refined product that allows me to sell into the retail channel where I still think I can make money.
Sure. So I don't know if Ryan, if you're on, I'd love to hear from you. You're welcome to say hello. Otherwise, I want to kind of dig into your process. Like, what makes your products a more superior product? Lance, is it, are you using water solubles? There's a lot of talk about, the different types of product or the different type of carrier oil that's used. Why should people use your products and what makes them a superior product? And I need some face products, so
Send
an order in.
a care package this afternoon for sure. So two things I would mention. One is specific to our formulation process, but the other is more specific to the way we structure our business. So on the formulation side, we try to stay as true to the plant as possible. We use full spectrum wherever we can. We made a determination a while back that it's very difficult to formulate edibles with full spectrum because there's a taste there that while some people appreciate it and want it, there's an aspect of it that's not going to meet more of a mainstream consumer demand. So we on the consumables or edible side, we are formulating with distillate, and we've put a tremendous amount of effort into our formulation process, creating recipes and testing and making sure that the potencies and the taste and the natural ingredients are all coming together to create a product that people can appreciate, that they enjoy consuming. So I think from our end, it's just the experience that we have, the diligence we put into it, and just the thoughtfulness around how we've created it. We're looking at adding new products every day. We'll be adding them as we go along. And we've already got a couple of very unique consumable products. I mentioned the skincare line. We'll continue to look for new ways to innovate. We haven't gotten into the beverages, so we've looked at nano-emulsion. We've looked at different ways of bringing an oil and a water together and making them stay, but we still don't think the technology is there to make that make it work really well, and so we're holding off on that part of it. The other piece of what I would say what makes us unique and why I think people should appreciate the products that we're producing is that we have a chain of custody from seed to all the way through to our formulated product in a package. We know where the product came from. I think my concern in looking at a lot of the products on the market is I don't understand where they come from. Like I don't know what seed they were grown from. I don't know the farmer that grew them. I don't know the processor that extracted it. I don't know the formulator that created it and packaged it. And in many cases, I think those 4 different roles can be played by 4 different people in different places. So I think the benefit for us, what we like about what we do, is that we do it all here. We know we created the seed that the plant was grown from, that the oil was extracted from, that the formulated product was infused from, and it was packaged and delivered to our customers.
It gives a sense of security to the consumer or the buyer. As a business, if I'm buying wholesale, right, and I'm looking for a product to distribute to my consumers or to my buyers, knowing that it's in-house is important to me, or knowing that it's vertically integrated is important to me, because I understand that, there's a lot of organizations that may take an acre from one farm and an acre or two from another farm, and one may not be organically grown and the other one is, but then they put it in and extract it, and now they're using in-house lab, or their lab isn't really a certified lab, and then by the time it gets to the person that's making my product, it may be a very reputable company, but there's a lot of hands that have now touched it on the in-between, and no real track and trace system that's universal. And so the idea of vertically integrated for consumables is very appealing for me, as when I think about distribution and when I think about partnering, when just the in-house operations, knowing that there's a solution, and that I'm not going to get to a spot where here I've grown product, or I have product and now I've made it to the next phase and I'm stuck with another sum of product. Right.
I think those are good points. And, for us, layering on the cooperative, us just is meaningful because we like being able, first of all, we just like, inherently being able to have those relationships. Those are satisfying to us. I like working with people from different walks, and I love working with farmers. So to me, there's an element of, what we're trying to convey there is we know where these are being grown. John's heading out to one of our farmers tomorrow to check on some incidents of males, and he was out last week working with some folks who had some cutworm problems. We've seen some caterpillars at another farm, and he's going out and troubleshooting all this stuff. These farmers are helping participate in the solutions for that stuff. So incumbent on, or as part of that, he's also seeing the development of the plants, and he's helping ensure that, if someone had been thinking about maybe spraying some pesticide on it, to talk to them about alternatives to that, right? And in the end, what we think will happen is there will be a much higher quality crop that we'll be able to select from to be able to create the products from it. And I think, from a messaging story and conveying that, to the market, I think it's going to be helpful in terms of, creating a a story around what we're doing and why it's meaningful. And we hope that it's going to resonate with the consumers.
And how impactful it is that you're allowing, and I say this all the time in Utah. Utah is not going to compare big scale to the Midwest. We're just not on growth, right? You guys are set up, like you said, your infrastructure, the amount of acres, the weather, there's a lot of change. A co-op is an ideal situation in Utah, in a lot of places, but specifically here where we have a lot of small farms, right? That now they can still participate in the opportunity and in the industry without drowning in the big masses, because as it comes on board and as hemp becomes more and more of a commodity, you move away from the opportunities to be competitive in cost if you're trying to do everything on your own, right? And so I'm really attracted to the idea of the co-op, and like you said, not just to the benefit of you, but to the benefit of everybody. Everybody's learning pieces.
Yeah. Our eventual goal is to expand that co-op. We're in 2 states now. We'd love to expand that concept, throughout the Midwest and beyond that as well. So that's one of the things we think would be valuable. We think it's doable, and we also think it creates good scale. You want to scale the business where it makes sense to scale it, and you don't want to scale it where it doesn't make sense. And I don't think it makes sense to scale CBD hemp in the cultivation stage. You need to have that be a craft grow. It's when you start to mechanize the production of this plant, you lose a lot. Whether it's in the cultivation stage or whether it's in the harvest or the drying stage, the more touches on this plant, the lower quality it's going to be. Trichomes reside on the outside of the plant. They are not going to stay there if you're bumping it around, throwing it through a combine, silaging it, drying it under, intense heat. So, it's not, I don't think that now we can talk about fiber another time. I don't think CBD hemp is scalable as a farming practice. I don't think it's going to become a large commodity crop. I think it's going to be a specialty crop. I think it will be something that retains a very high premium. But then post cultivation, there's the opportunity to scale. And that's what we think we can do in partnership with farmers, is help scale that post-harvest process to develop really high quality product.
Okay, so I have a question. I've read a lot, and I'm not an expert in this, so fill me in. But where the DEA has come into total THC, including Delta 8, and where you see, we kind of touched on it a little bit, where the FDA has kind of put some, or we're waiting on regulations to come out from the FDA because CBD is now in a medication, not a vitamin, right, in a prescription for an Epidiolex. Where do you see CBD going and this market going? Give me some feedback. There's a lot of conversation that the worry that it's going to be cornered into the market with cannabis and distributed under big pharma compared to a nutraceutical or a vitamin. And, where do you see that split? I feel like the industry on the Farm Bill is divided into two pieces, cannabis and industrial hemp. And I feel like there's almost three pieces: industrial fiber, hemp, which is what you guys, hemp, CBD, topicals, consumables, and then medical. What are your thoughts as far as where you see this going, being in the CBD and extraction?
I think we're seeing it just organically grow. I don't think necessarily there are major changes to the structure of the market. I think the market's already kind of found, it'll continue to expand in terms of scale and quantity, and certain types of product as, people become more technically proficient in making them. But I think we're just operating under a chill right now. And it's kind of it's an interesting place to be, because you're going back to your DEA comment. Processors right now are in a bit of a bind because, the recent DEA release, I think it was on the 25th. I think what they said is, yes, we agree and we're on board that CBD is a compound, it's not Schedule 1, but not everything derived from hemp is not Schedule 1. So if you take and you artificially or synthetically derive a THC product from, say, a Delta 8 or something else, you're in violation of Schedule 1. And I think the other part of this, the processors are particularly worried about is, so when you take biomass and you convert it into oil, what you're doing essentially is you're concentrating the quantity of these compounds into a liquidized version. So you take a plant that's got, say, 15% CBD, and well, we're not going to get there. Let's say it's 10% CBD, 0.3 THC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you convert that into a 70% CBD, right? Well, you've multiplied the CBD from the biomass to the oil by 7 times. You're going to multiply the THC 2% by 7 times. So you're over 2% on THC once you have that oil, invariably. And I think the problem is that, under the technical guidance from DEA, that processor is theoretically, in possession of a controlled substance. And, so I think this has put a huge chill on the processing market. And, until that gets resolved one way or another, it's just created a lot more business risk for people trying to operate in the space.
It's a lot of gray. And this is where I get nervous, when we talk about new companies coming in, and I'm sure Matt and Ryan can relate to this, when this gray area is out there, what are the effects of new money coming in when we want to build up the infrastructure? When the risk comes back to at any point federally, rules can change, or you can be criminally charged now for processing the same way you've been doing business, and understanding that your final product and this start product was less than 0.3. But in that process, there's that gray area that's pretty risky. And yeah, I hear a lot of, that's the concern, is as it's already hard to raise money in this industry because of the risk and the banking and the challenges. But then you add, this big gray area where, like you said, the industry's still up and running. And I don't know if this is accurate or not. I'll put this out there, but I almost feel like this year and all of our problems or challenges we've been faced with have almost made it an opportunity for this industry to gain hold and grow without, there wasn't a lot of attention put on this industry to change a lot of rules. And so as there wasn't, the industry continued to grow and develop, versus everything being focused on the cannabis and hemp space.
Yeah. My background is in a highly regulated space, the banking industry, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been, it's been an interesting juxtaposition to be in this space where there's not a whole lot of concrete guidance around what's right, what's not right. The rules are unclear. There are just not rules in certain places where there should be. So, but I think this is probably endemic to new growth industries, right? You're really kind of making up a lot of the stuff as you go along, and you're trying to be as compliant,
Yeah.
as you can. A lot of it is just using common sense, trying to be ethical about the decisions you make. And I think I'm seeing change. I mean, I think a lot of the players in this industry come out of the marijuana space, and I think that's got its own unique challenges in terms of it having been essentially a black market industry for so long, and I think that breeds a certain kind of attitude and personality in the participants. So I think what I'm seeing now though is sort of I would say a transformation of the people who are voicing participating, being less I would say proprietary and secretive about what they do, but being more cooperative and focused on trying to sort of build things forward and thinking about 2 steps ahead, and not just how much money am I going to make this year by selling people a bunch of bunk seed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we've interviewed quite a few people that say, it's funny, as they've been in this industry for quite a while, running a real business. You can tell when your clients or other buyers start running a real business. They either hire an accountant or their bank accounts get set up and their money finally starts to get picked up and paid on time. And it really is. I think that you're starting to see people, one, that haven't been in the industry come into the industry, and people that have been in the industry now have resources and tools to be able to run a legitimate business, even down to simple like QuickBooks or different accounting softwares that were open and available to everybody that weren't open to anybody in the cannabis space.
Yeah.
And so now, it's really just started to open up. There's definitely been a shift. Before we hang up, Ryan and Matt, are you guys on? I'd love to hear from you guys and kind of get your perspective on the business.
Mandy, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Yeah. Sorry, we're having some difficulty with videos, so
That's okay.
thanks for having us. Yeah.
I suckered Lance in. He didn't have an option. I told him we didn't have a choice, and then you guys ruined it. So how are you guys?
We're great. I don't know how much Matt gave on introduction, but we're here locally with you guys in Salt Lake, and I'm assuming most of your members, Mandy, are kind of in the along the Wasatch Front here. Is it pretty much all over the state?
Our face-to-face events and stuff have been obviously mostly in Utah, but our listeners and members of AHA are all over the nation and globe.
Very good. Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'd love to hear Matt give us a little bit of an overview about who you were, and when Ryan gets on, he'll give a better intro.
Yeah. Can you repeat that? It was breaking up. What'd you say?
I apologize. He said that Matt gave a little bit of an intro and then said when you get on, he would let you give the real intro.
You bet. I kind of jumped in here late, so I don't know how far you guys got with things, but Lance and I, we kind of started a partner a few years ago, in a private equity opportunity where we're exploring the different places to go with it and where the opportunities might exist. And it was interesting at the time that we had a number of our clients that were approaching us about investment in some kind of a marijuana, play. And, as we were researching, different opportunities within, public markets, we were realizing just the level of premium that investors were paying to play. And for me, it was, stepping back from this and analyzing, is this really an opportunity for us in maybe a private equity position to go after something and bring our investors into a ground floor investment? And really that was kind of the start of our relationship and our build in the private equity. Lance having a number of years experience in private equity. I'm on the other side, as a registered investment advisor here in Utah. We cover a number of states. But, as we've been working through this, Lance was doing a lot of the groundwork and where to go and how to position, us into an investment like this. So the last few years have been quite a grind.
Definitely. It's funny when I hear people say, oh, I'm going to hurry up and dump my retirement or sell my home. I'm going to grow hemp because that's the gold rush or the green rush. And it's much more labor intensive, and there's been a lot of ups and downs.
It is, and I think it's a patience game too. We're very mindful of due diligence and just how much time we will take in making these investments. So we have a really strong fiduciary duty to our investors, and so we're pretty engaged on the oversight of the fund and our ownership in this operation and how we're moving this thing forward.
So what are some things, I guess, to all of you that we can do as an association to really help you guys as a business move things forward?
Well, I think that for us, it's just, I guess with any business, right? It's marketing and just getting your name out there and letting people know what you do. And if there's, services that, people need. I don't know how far you guys got into any of the services that Sulcanna provides, maybe more on the white labeling side or anything like that, but I'm sure that's something that, can be for another conversation.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. I think what you're doing, Mandy, is valuable. Bringing people together. I think there's still a lot of separation and distance between participants in the industry, and that'll change over time. And I think efforts like the one you're making are imperative to make that happen. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, I love this. It's funny when people say, well, even with you, Lance, we were talking, we said, well, what are we going to talk about? There's so much to talk about and so much to touch on. It's hard. My favorite part, though, is I feel like I shove it down people's throats so much. It's nice hearing the same thing from someone else, that it's just refreshing to know that I'm not like the Lorax on Dr. Seuss, but I really do speak for the trees and I really am passionate about what's happening. And so it's nice working with people like you guys that are doing it right. And it's more than just the money grab, right? We're all in it because there's an opportunity, but it really is a long-term play and a lot of opportunity to help a lot of different people. I just saw here that Justin had a really good question. Do you see any Reg D accredited investors offerings in the cannabis space gaining traction? And I would assume Ryan, I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, I'll let Ryan talk about it too, but I think that's exactly what we did when we raised capital for this. Actually, we used the Reg D offering to do that. So I think absolutely those opportunities exist. I think probably not as many as I think many people would like to be able to have access to, because it's typically much more private and they aren't advertised. They're unsolicited offerings. So, but they're out there. Yeah, Ryan, do you want to say anything about it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. Right, was moved through Reg D offering to accredited investors within our base. I think. It's tough, right? Because if you're not accredited, it's just more difficult to get into this space. But I think in the near term, there's going to be opportunities for these non-accredited investors to be jumping into the space. Lance and I were talking about just how do we at some point start to maybe liquidate or liquefy the operation, and there's certain ways to do that. And that would be at a point where there are, non-accredited investors that are able to get into that opportunity. So we're seeing it. We're seeing more and more of it in that space. And I think with the slowdown in the hemp and pricing and everything, it has slowed down investment to a certain point. But I think that does change over time, and I think things start to move back into the space.
Well, I hear a lot of times, say like first money's been in, now new money's coming in. And so I do envision opportunities open up, just like when it comes to, we'll all be at networking events or different meetings, and I'll look over and I'll say, oh, wait, you were in hemp? I had no idea. But I mean, people, new business people are starting to come in from all different verticals.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the white label service that you guys have? Tell me a little bit about what that looks like, and how do people get in touch with you guys if they have questions or want to get involved, or have questions about the co-op?
Yeah, so our white label business kind of organically grew out of the cooperative business we're running. We're trying. This is our first season with the cooperative, and the way it operates is, farmers, post season bring material to us, and we process it through and refine it into final product. A lot of the farmers we have in the cooperative grew last year, and so we've been extracting their material along, as we've been talking to them about the cooperative and growing this year. And once they've gotten to the point of having converted their biomass to oil, the question invariably comes up: well, what do I do with my oil now? And so we set up a program to say, look, wouldn't it be great if you were able to take your own oil that you grew and take it to your local market in the form of a edible or a topical or a smokable, and actually market it yourself, and like sort of it's a full sort of chain of custody that you have. Where this came from, you grew it, and I think it's a really powerful thing. And a lot of the farmers who have been increasingly taking us up on this have had great success, even if it's just going to farmers markets or on farm market or going to a local drugstore or grocery store. We're seeing a lot of good traction with it. So I think for us, the white label business has been one where we've sort of organically grown it out of what we're doing. And we see that it's actually a full-fledged, interesting business in and of itself. So we encourage anyone who would like to take advantage of that service. We can actually extract their biomass and turn it into product and let them track it back to their own field. If you wanted to reach out to us to have a chat, you can reach me at Lance@Sulcanna.com. That's
.com, right?
.com. Yep.
Perfect. I just shared it on all of our feeds. I was looking on your page. If somebody that doesn't have farm property wants to get involved in the co-op, do you guys have property that they can? I saw on your page, is it like depends on which level, say I do a $5,000 or $5,500 membership, that gets me so many seeds and so many acres that will eventually turn into so many liters or so many pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've structured this pretty flexibly. A cooperative is one that's, it's a single member, single vote cooperative. So it's a true cooperative in the agricultural sense. And it's comprised solely of producers. So, we're not inviting, marketers or, it's about farmers working with farmers to produce product. There are some of the farmers who have joined exclusively really just to get access to white label, or to sort of be a part of the other services we're marketing, which is fine. But we're asking that anyone who's involved here is actually looking to be a producer, whether it be a quarter acre or even smaller or up to 10 to 15 acres. We're working with groups all within those ranges of size of acreage.
Well, I love it. And I love that it really is wherever you can step in or need to step in, you have the solution. I think that there's a lot of pieces that have been put together. Even we saw this in the association, right? There's a lot of associations out there. A lot of them are either, based on product being produced, like a CBD or a construction material, or they're regionally structured. There's really not an all-inclusive. And something like what you guys have done is really like I said, that seed to shelf supply chain and a solution for any size business,
Yeah. And I think we're talking our book a lot today, so I apologize for that. But I think when you think about what for someone who looking to be involved in the industry, there are lots of different ways. It doesn't have to be all vertical. So, I think, but I think the risk for us and the reason we've done it the way we've done it is because we just didn't want to get too exposed to any one, part of the value chain. I think they're obviously, we're capitalized well so that we can do that. And I would love to talk more in more detail. We could go into any one of these verticals and spend a whole, day talking about each one of them. And I'd be happy to do that. Anyone interested in reaching out just to have the conversation, share our experience and our knowledge, what we've learned.
Well, I think that's what I'm the most passionate about or have learned. And people ask me all the time, when I start talking about the capabilities of an association or of the industry, no other plant fits into every single little space. And so it's hard sometimes for me to narrow in, well, what are we going to talk about today? Or what is it that my ask is, or that I'm focused on? And I think for me personally, it's educating and giving people a platform or an opportunity. We're creating this big database of searchable content where anybody at any point can get on and say, hey, I'm curious about genetics, and anything we've spoken about can pull up and be a resource, right, for people, as well as a platform on the back end, so that you being in the space or interested in getting into this space, have a resource of who to talk to and what's out there and who's doing what right. And so that's really what's been the most fascinating to me. So I would love to have you back on, and I would love to talk about each of these verticals. I'd love to talk more about the endocannabinoid system or the cannabinoids and how they're working, what you're seeing specifically. I don't know if you real quick want to touch on what are some of the cannabinoids that you're focusing on or that you're seeing becoming popular?
I think this year was the explosion of CBG. And so we've got a test plot outside our facility here with about 40 different strains that we're growing, and testing and understanding, doing R&D on. We have 3 different CBG varieties that we're working on now. I hear a lot of talk about other minor cannabinoids that people are looking to try and isolate and express in the plant form. Our experience so far with CBG is that if CBD is in its infancy, CBG hasn't even been born yet. I mean, it's the plant's structures we're seeing and the consistency among different phenotypes is challenging, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening probably who had experience with it would echo that. So we're many years away from getting further down that road. I think CBC, I'm hearing, and people are trying to isolate.
Sure.
CBN is something that is just becoming increasingly interesting to people. So we'll see that, and we'll see it in proliferation of product that's built around those. You see it now in shops. You see CBG focused products. So I think it's fantastic. I mean, and all these different cannabinoids have different properties that affect that endocannabinoid system differently. So,
Sure.
But going back, I think for me, I still believe in the full spectrum approach. I think the farther away we get, it's why we haven't really gotten involved in isolates, because you're turning something that has I think just as a raw material great value to the human system, and you're picking and choosing pieces of it to use. And I don't think we know enough yet to know what benefits we're giving up and at what costs.
Well, you said earlier, the less times we touch it, right? Or the more times we're touching it, the further away we're getting away from the value. And I think that's just it. And it's almost like we're dissecting it to put it back together. It's like we had to take it apart to prove that what was already there was the best way.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot because people's formulation practices, they're trying to figure out how to create this product that has exactly what they want to have in it. And our approach has been more just, let's just not muck around too much with with the compound, or the compounds and the composition of them. Let's use them as they get pulled from the plant and create products that way. I think as science moves on and its sophistication and more study is done, we'll have a better idea how to do that more responsibly.
Sure.
But so far, I think it's our approach, just and it's our opinion, really is all it is that the more we leave it alone, the better off we are.
Sure. Well, Jon, I'd love to have you back on sometime also and talk about what I know the least about, and it is on the farm. I'd love to even see sometime. I'd love, anytime. I'd love to have you on if you're ever out in the field or just want to chat. I'd love to speak about the seeds to cultivation and what that process looks like. Any tips? Like I said, I'm very uneducated about that piece. I have a lot of people very interested, and I firmly believe that that is the most valuable piece of this whole puzzle, because without it, we wouldn't be here. So, I would love to share. I'd love to talk.
I mean, anytime that you want us to jump on, we can go ahead and do that and kind of run you through really any of the aspects of growing it. In the meantime, if anyone's kind of curious about, the small window into what we do, you guys can look at us at facebook.com/Sulcanna Hemp. And that'll give you just a couple pictures of things like our flower rooms, plants out in the field. And it's another good spot if you do just have brief questions to reach out and ask those. But again, as far as us coming on and talking about the growing end of it, we'd be happy to do that anytime you'd like us.
Yeah, I would love it. In fact, sooner than later, I'm kind of going to formalize. I am going to formalize these a little bit. We're going to start doing some commercials and break them up. I've got a lot of interest and we're growing pretty quickly, getting some good traction. And so as nervous as it makes me, even just coming on here, it was a stretch for me. I had never even hosted a Zoom before COVID and the pandemic. And so now I'm on every single day interviewing people, but I'm just ready to take it to a new level and really grow. And with that, I'll formalize it a little bit and we'll have some more structured conversations, but I'd love your feedback and I'd love to involve you guys in that as much as possible. And Jon, just from a face farmer, do you have any good hemp beard oil suggestions?
I don't. I haven't delved into that end of it yet, but as soon as I do, I'll let you know.
That's in our product development. Yeah, we're going to get there.
Okay, I was going to say that may be one that we're not talking about that's coming.
It'll be on the list then.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I really enjoyed having you. I'll send over invites for our upcoming events. I did share your contact information, Lance. And then Lance, if you can connect Jon and I and Ryan, I hope to see you on Thursday. Matt, you're welcome to join us as well. I don't know if you'll be there at the trap shoot.
Yeah, we plan to both be there, so we'll look forward to that.
Excellent. I'm sorry, we'll have to come out your way, Lance, and do something.
We're welcome to visit for sure. Keep up the good work, man. This is good stuff.
Well, thank you very much. You guys have a good day.
All right.
Thank you.